Chainsaw 8 presents. I'm your interrogator, Major Tom Rogers, and our first guest ever is Paul Burns.
That's me. You can call me PEBIV.
I will call you PEBIV.
Perfect.
Maybe. Hopefully.
We'll see.
So yeah, this is a test. This is a new thing. I don't know if it's going to work. We're going to consider this a pilot episode. Hopefully it doesn't suck. My guess is it absolutely will. We got people joining into the chat. Hello, Idify.
Hey, Idify.
I haven't figured out yet if we want to interact with the chat as it's happening, or if we want to, like, I posted in the Facebook group that I don't want to interact with the chat too much because it could break up the flow for things. But if we see that we can do both well, then it's definitely something I want to do a lot more of. So yeah, Sorry, go ahead. What were you saying?
I was going to say, so if you've got some questions, put them into the chat.
Yeah, put them in there.
Maybe we'll integrate them into the conversation.
What I would inevitably see one day is that, people will get excited about a particular or a potential guest, and then they could, get their questions all queued up, and then at the end of the show we could answer, I don't even know how long the show's going to be, but let's say it's 30 minutes long.
Yeah.
Spend 20 minutes talking about thing X, and then the last 10 minutes talking about, or answering any types of questions that people have. Couldn't have asked for a better guest. I completely agree.
Thank you, Idify.
I appreciate you being a guinea pig.
Oh, my pleasure.
Hopefully, you and I have a couple of different ideas for things that are coming, that are in the works for Chainsaw Ape, and I hope that something like this will be able to give us a better idea of how to do some of those things as well. This is basically just an interview show. I'm going to be asking PEBIV here a set of questions, and he will be answering the questions however he sees fit. So
yeah,
it's going to be tough for me because I like to talk. I never ever shut the fuck up. So when I was a manager, I'd be like, "All right, guys, tell me how you feel," and then half the meeting would be like me talking, responding to them, going into greater detail. So hopefully I get better at keeping my mouth shut when I need to.
Well, let's see how it goes.
Let's go ahead and jump right in.
All right.
Oh, actually, we are live on Twitch, twitch.tv/Chainsaw. This show will be available on YouTube as well if you are watching this show on YouTube. Let us know in the comments what you think of it, what we can do better, things like that. Hopefully we can improve the audio and video quality of things as time goes on. So let's jump right in.
Absolutely.
So, first question I have for you is, tell me about your gaming history.
Well, I was wondering how detailed you wanted to be.
Yeah.
So when you suggested that we'd have this show, I sat down and I wrote myself 2 pages of games, starting with starting in 1976 when I had my first gaming experience.
That is the perfect place to jump off. What was your first gaming experience?
So my first gaming experience was my stepfather he went in with all the guys at his cable company. He worked at a cable company. And they all went in together, and they bought Pong. It was a small electrical thing with 2 paddles. It was basically a box with 2 paddles. And you brought it home, and you hooked it up to your TV, and our TV was black and white. But that was okay, because so was Pong.
For sure.
And the TV screen was, we've had larger phones than the TV screen that we had. And I remember being so excited because at the time I was like 5, 6 years old, right? I was very young. And I was so excited because my stepfather was excited and my mom was excited and they'd been talking about it. It's going to come home. And I was like, what is this going to be? And they hooked it all up and they set it up and then we played it and I watched it and I said, that is really disappointing. And I was really unimpressed.
It's the whole idea that televisions before games were a thing. Now, granted, there was at least one game that came out before Pong. I think Pong was like the second game ever.
That's what I understand.
But for your television having a very specific purpose, especially back in the day when watching movies on television wasn't much of a thing. You could, in the 70s, but television kind of evolved from just having television programs to allowing you to watch films on it to getting to the point to where you can interact with the things on your television screen through things like Pong. So, really, interesting idea. It's cool that you got to be a part of that.
Absolutely. But as a 7-year-old, I did not understand the quality of that. Although it did represent the problem I have with games today. And that was, when I played it, I thought, I can do this better in the real world. This doesn't get me anything. But it all changed with Missile Command. Because Missile Command was something I couldn't do in the real world. And suddenly I got to pretend like I was in this big war and it was my job to protect the world from these incoming missiles, and I got really into it. While specifically the game itself, the mechanics isn't that much different from what you'd see in Pong, suddenly I felt like I was a part of the game, and it was a story that was bigger than me.
So did you play it on the Atari, or was there like a different?
My original Missile Command experience was the Atari 5200.
Is that the one that like was a joystick that had just a button?
So this one, no. This is the one. This is
where you turn it.
The one where you actually turned it.
Okay.
And it was a very strange experience. I had gone over to a friend's house, and my mom and my stepfather wanted to go out partying that night. And I was fascinated by this game, and they kept trying to drag me away from it. It's time to go home, and I didn't want to go anywhere. And they said, well, okay, we're going to go out then. 6 hours later, I woke up and went, wow, I've been playing this game for hours and hours and hours, and where's everybody gone? And it had gotten dark, and my parents were literally like out partying, gone, having fun. I was having a sleepover. I had no idea how that had happened or how it set up. And it was a little surprising to me how much I had lost track of where I was in the real world. And unfortunately, or fortunately, depending on how you look at it, gaming has always been that way for me.
So let me ask you this. Gaming is kind of something a little bit different for everyone. So I personally have always seen games as kind of like a form of entertainment for me, similar to like how I see movies or books. But I know a lot of people see gaming as escapism or giving them the opportunity to live in different worlds, be in different worlds. What was Missile Command for you?
It was an opportunity to be someone other than who I was and live in a world that was different. Whereas Pong didn't afford me that opportunity and wasn't as appealing to me. And to this day, I'm not interested in playing tennis or soccer. FIFA is a great game, and I'm sure people enjoy it. But whenever I play it, I think, well, I could just be doing this in the real world.
I do want to take a moment real quick to let everybody out there know you are an employee of Electronic Arts.
I am an employee of Electronic Arts.
Nothing I say. The disclaimer will appear right here for all of our YouTube people, but the general gist is your opinions are yours.
Yep.
And
nothing I say reflects the opinions of Electronic Arts.
Cool. Sorry to derail.
No, not at all. Not at all.
Make sure to get that out of the way.
But here's the part that became where games got interesting to me, is that my father, I had a strange relationship with my father. And one of the things that my father did is that he played tabletop games. And these were these die-cut pieces, these tiny little cardboard pieces that were all these squares on these huge hex boards. And they were complex, and there were pages and pages of rules that to attempt to simulate real life. And so he would use it to reenact wars and to change events that he had lived through in war to his own liking.
So, at first when you were saying tabletop stuff, I was picturing like Dungeons and Dragons. Was this like Axis and Allies?
This is much more like Axis and Allies, but much more complex. And it was more. If you aren't familiar with these kinds of games, they take multiple years to play. Cool. They will occupy entire rooms. You have big charts that say things like standing up takes this amount of time, and sitting down means that it changes their chance to be hit by gunfire by this amount. And he would reenact all of these situations and try and change them to his liking or explore different solutions. And for me, I think he was processing his war experiences through it. But I was just fascinated because I was just like a little kid. I wanted so much to participate. But it was so much more complex than anything that I could ever comprehend. And so he would try to show me how to play it, and it wouldn't work. And so one day I came in and I was all about it. I wanted to play and I wanted to participate. And he said, we're not playing a game today. Today, you're making a game. And he said, this is what you're going to do. This is how you're going to have this experience. And we invented a game. It was a really dumb game. It was a big hex board with stars. and I made little cardboard pieces that looked like ships. And then we wrote the rules that said how fast the ships could move, and when you landed on a spot, you rolled a die, and one of 6 things would happen.
That sounds like so much fun.
It really was. And it was very simple. Like, you'd get there and you'd roll the dice, and it would say, oh, an alien appeared, and you fight him, and then you'd roll a die and see if you won. And after that, I got it in my head that I was going to be a game designer, that that's what I was going to do with my life. And that's when video games became so much more interesting to me. Because right after that, my stepdad got an Apple II. Brought it home, set it up, Karateka and Sneakers and all of these games that I swear no one else on the planet has ever heard of.
I've never heard of either of those.
Well, they all... Well, see, I would play them, and I wanted to design games, because my dad had said, this is something you could do, and I had done it. I'd made a game, so that's how, I don't know, maybe I was trying to impress my dad, maybe I was trying to just, like, figure out what my role was in the world. And so, right after that, this guy named, it was Gary's Kitchen Game Maker came out, and it was advertised in all my comic books. And what it was this little game where you design a sprite, or a program where you design a sprite, and then you would be able to move the sprite around and press a button, and it would either shoot or it would jump. It was like imagine it was like a very, very simplistic version of Mario.
Mario Maker?
Mario Maker.
Yeah.
Very super simple version of it on the Apple II. Literally, I think I had 4 colors to work with. Yeah. It was super simplistic. But man, that's what I was going to do. I was going to make games. And so that's what I worked with.
Very cool.
And until Compute started coming out with games you could type in, they had a magazine, and you would bring them you get the magazine, and it would on the back it would have like 2 pages of code, and you would write down the code into your computer and save it, because there was no discs there was no way a 5 1/4 floppy was going to survive being shipped anywhere. So you would type in your code and save it, and then you'd run it and play it. And I discovered that I could make small changes to the code and create my own games that way.
I never knew that about you.
Yeah.
Super interesting. So we have a good grasp of, like, you know, what the early days were like for you. What are some of the games throughout the last, 20, 30, 40 years, not to date you, but
Certainly.
that have kind of stood out to you, or have been favorites of yours, or I guess, a lot of times a game can remind you of a specific time in your life. What are some of the games that kind of highlighted your life?
Well, so I went and I put together this list. And when I did, I realized that that I used games. So the games that highlighted my life are the games come in there are 2 kinds of game experiences that I had throughout my life. One was an experience where I was trying to be proactive and create games, and the other is where I was using games to escape my life. So an example, I think appropriate to your question, is Diablo 2. When Diablo 2 came out, my life was ending. My whole life had been turned on end, and I was, quite frankly, unable to cope with it in any way, shape, or fashion. But Diablo 2 came out, and so I sat down and I started playing Diablo 2, and I just disappeared into it. And it was my own descent into hell, manifest by a game that was about descending into hell. And one of the qualities about me is that I don't finish games. It is a conscious, I don't know if it's a conscious decision, but I can count the number of games I've finished on 2 hands, easily. And Diablo 2 was one of the first games. So the first game I ever finished was Ultima 4. But the second game I ever finished was Diablo 2, because I was just sort of lost in this miserable world, and Diablo 2 is the way to escape from that. And to this day, if I get out Diablo 2 and start playing it, I can completely turn off and disconnect from the whole world.
Yeah, I was curious about that. If it's one of those things that there are... Sometimes you can hear a song, and it will remind you of when you were, like, a time and place in your life, or something that you went through. I was curious if Diablo 2 took you back to a place that you have maybe not great memories, or, like you said, your life was ending, or, like you said, use it as an escape.
It's actually it's more like it's a cue for me to let everything go. So if I start playing Diablo 2, then I can just sort of, like, whatever problem I might be running into just floats away.
There's magic to that, and I think that there's, video games are just another entertainment medium like everything else. But there's things like player agency. There are things that how you, as an individual, can inject yourself into it, and the emotional connections, whether it be through the story or through where you are in your time of life. I think that stuff can be very important, and it's so cool to think that, like you had this interest in creating games. There's someone out there who put their heart and soul into making Diablo 2.
Very much so.
And they work hard and they put themselves out there and they put their creation out into the world, and then someone uses that thing for them is not just entertainment or even maybe just escape. It can be something that can calm you. It can be something that can, give you different outlooks on life. And that's why a show like this should exist.
Absolutely.
Just so we can celebrate, or even have problems with games that have negative impacts on us. So, as you're talking about it, I'm thinking about, now I don't know who created Diablo 2. I know Blizzard created it and published it, but I don't know who the head creative producer or director.
I don't know off the top of my head either.
But they did something, and they had an impact on your life, and I think that's brilliant.
And I would argue one of the reasons that it was so successful is that it involved all of the senses. So the music for it was so well crafted and so integral to the play, and each image, it was a sprite-based game. Each image had been created and lovingly crafted to flow and to connect with each of the other images. And as a result, you could get lost in that game. And so I admire the craft work in making a game that could do this. Now, I also think that it's maybe there are situations where you can jump into a game when you should really be paying attention to what's going on in your life.
For sure.
And I think that Diablo 2
to be too frequently.
Very much so. And Diablo 2 was a game that did that to me a great deal. EverQuest is another example. Warcraft is another supremely good example.
Let me ask you this. I'm going to show
Sure.
my knowledge here. Has EverQuest always been an online game?
Yes.
Okay, so I didn't know if when you say EverQuest, there's a specific single player type game, or this was your foray into.
No,
maybe not your initial foray, but.
So I initially started with Ultima Online. I was a part of the beta on Ultima Online, and
that can still going, right?
Yeah, isn't that crazy?
Dude, it's wild, absolutely wild.
And EverQuest was sort of like the grown-up version of Ultima Online. It introduced 3D effects, whereas Ultima Online was sprite-based. It was the first actual MMO, I would argue, that you would play. It was a lot more based on the MUDs and that sort of thing. So EverQuest was
MUDs?
Multi-user dungeon. So,
okay. Gotcha.
And that was actually how my experience began with gaming. So I had done all single-player experiences, but my first multiplayer experience with gaming was MUDs. I got a 2400 baud modem. I saved up $100. I worked all summer. I got a 2400 baud modem and hooked it up to my IBM XT. It was like the second model of computer they ever made. This friend of mine was throwing it away, and I hooked these up together, and I went and I played a MUD, and that's entirely text-based. And it was literally, it would tell you what was going on. You're in a room and you see, like Zork, you're in a room and you see these 4 people, and then the 4 other online people would be there, and you'd say hello to blah, and let's go west, and you go west and, kick the gnome and then hit him with your sword. But it was all just typing it out, and it did 2 things. One, it made me a really good typist, because you had to get the whole sentence out before your guy would do anything. And 2, it introduced me to this idea of multiplayer. So when EverQuest came along, it created a graphical interface for that experience, and that experience is really mirrored in Warcraft or SWATer or any of the other modern multiplayer games.
I was listening to a podcast a couple of days ago, and they were talking about how they were playing a current MMO, and then they decided to go back and play an MMO from 15 years ago, and like how many things how many refinements have been made in MMOs since then. I'm curious what, based on like the early days of MMOs, what was like social communication like? Like things like the way that a game would guide you or direct you, like finding new quests or things like that. I feel like that stuff has gotten a lot more streamlined as time has gone on. Do you have like recollections of the complexities of that, or like even if you were stuck or confused, where you would refer to get information on like how to take this next quest or this person that you can talk to, that can give you information?
So my experience with it has been that it is really much better than it used to be. But in the initial, there was an expectation that you would do. RTFM was a very real and valid thing. When I played Deku muds. That was a particular type of mud, and they were designed in a way. They were all open source, or this particular kind of mud was open source. And there was an expectation that you would have set up a server of your own, run it, and played it a little, figured out how to make rooms, so that when you came to play the game with all the other people, you already knew the ins and outs of how the game worked. And this worked because there was, a big mud would have 30 people on it, 60 people on it. That was huge. That was unbelievable.
For sure.
But you'd have these tiny groups of people that could sort of teach each other and sheriff each other. So there was a whole lot of trolling and a lot of there was just this sort of expectation of skill and understanding. And so when you ask, like, how do you find out about a quest? Well, half the time it was written by the guy that's sitting right next to you, and so you'd say, hey, we're going into this room, is there anything I should watch out for? And they'll say, like, figure out what to do with the candlestick. And so you would poke the candlestick, and you would jump on the candlestick, and you would... it played a lot like Myst games, or, those point-and-click games, but with text.
Yeah.
And... But honestly, there was a real expectation that you, as the player, were going to bring your own understanding and your own expertise to the experience. And in fact, we had long arguments. Like, so I'd go out to smoke while I was working, and me and my group of friends would all sit and we would argue about the same sorts of things that today are solved by rules. So we would argue about trolling and if somebody was behaving inappropriately, how you correct that, right? Do you correct it by having everybody shame that person, or do you correct it by changing the rules of the game so that when you typed the instruction to do the trolling thing, it just wasn't allowed to happen? Were we going to introduce squelching? Was a big deal. Should you be able to ignore a person in the game?
Yeah.
Half of the people, and I was on the other side that said it should not happen. You shouldn't be able to ignore people. You're going to play games with people for the purpose of interacting with them.
Yeah.
And they're going to be jerks, and you should be able to deal with that. But the truth is that many of these problems were all solved through the mechanics of the game. Group finders, little things like dungeon things. People leading you to quests was a technology that was sort of growing and developing. Baldur's Gate had really good quests leading people into quests, and everybody else kind of picked that up and tried to integrate it into their games. And so you asked that question. It really has changed a great deal.
It feels like a back in my day type thing where it's like we didn't have all these guides and. I'm kind of at a crossroads with this because I have this feeling of like games are better now for it, but then there's also this kind of craftsmanship or art associated with like discovery. There are still games that come out now that like the magic of that game is the discovery. When I think about like my experience with Bloodborne, going into a new area and where is an enemy gonna like pop up out at me or things like that. There are things that. As you progress through the game, you get to a point to where you know the placement of the enemies. But that feeling of going into an area for the first time and not knowing what to do, or not understanding a system in a game, or not understanding a lot of the systems in games, playing them, and then slowly you understand this system, and then the next time you play, you understand another system. there's value in that, and there's entertainment in that. So it's kind of interesting.
But I think that there are different kinds of experiences that you can have with games. I think that both kinds of experiences have value, and that while our choices in the gaming environment that we have now forces us into certain types of gaming experiences, I think that we can use our history to say, hey, here's another way that you can organize a gaming experience, and maybe that's a good way or a bad way.
I feel like you're segueing us nicely into kind of where we're at with games now. So games are, I would argue, bigger than they've ever been before. I think that we're in a, everything from like our grandparents playing like a bubble popping game on their phone to these people who get obsessed with one particular game for months and months and months and months. Hardcore things like MOBAs and things like that. Games are bigger and broader and everywhere.
Absolutely.
Recently there was a Twitch stream that had over 600,000 views. Like 600,000 people were watching that. That's like television. Those are numbers that television shows
aspire to.
Exactly.
Absolutely.
How do you feel about like where we're at with the state of the industry, the gaming industry, and kind of how much we've branched off, and how there are these hardcore and
so I actually have mixed
casuals.
feelings about it. I think that the industry is figuring out how to get the most out of people, and I think that is a good thing. The industry, the games are figuring out how to get people to want to play them. They're getting much better at reducing the headaches associated with game playing, and reducing the hurdles that impact your ability to play the game. The games are becoming that's allowing the audience to grow. It's allowing people to have more experiences with games than they would have previously. And that's a good thing.
for sure.
But I would argue, excuse me, but I would argue that it's the opposite of what I want out of my games personally. And because what I want out of my games is I want it to pull something out of me. And I think that our games are becoming more like what our TV is. You're getting a game that's like when you go to an Avengers movie, you know what you're gonna get. Yeah. And when you watch the movie, you're gonna have the experiences that they have designed for you to have. You are going to have the heartwarming moment. You are going to get excited at the exciting moments. And I think an excellent example of this would be that game that you like so much with where you hang from trains and jump so much, Uncharted.
Oh yeah.
So that creates those experiences. And let me tell you, so like back in the day when I would go and I would go and I would hang out at Origin. I knew a bunch of the guys at Origin. And I would go and I would hang out in their test labs and like try to get them to notice me and try to like, hey, I'm cool, you could hire me and I could, I would go up there literally every 6 months and apply because that was the most they would let you apply to try and get a job there. But the thing that they all talked about when I was doing that was how do we give people the movie experience? So when at that time they were making BioShock, and they were trying to give them the experience. They made Wing Commander 3, which had Mark Hamill and movie pieces integrated into it. And so when we see things like Mass Effect 3, man, that is the culmination of that goal, making that experience. But here's my problem with it. Brilliant. That's a great experience to have. I love doing it. I'll play Mass Effect anytime. Don't get me wrong. But here's what it doesn't do. It doesn't tell me anything about me. I don't get to learn anything new about myself through that experience. So the kinds of things that make me excited about where gaming is going is Fallout. And the people who are looking for the movie experience tend to not enjoy Fallout as much because it's full of bugs and it's got an inconsistent, there you go. It's got an inconsistent experience, blah, blah, blah. But here's what you can do is you can mod that sucker. And I can go in there and I can create a character. And I do this for myself. I don't release any of these mods, but I go in and I say, I want a character right here, and I want him to say this thing, and I'm going to steal this thing that they're saying from over here, and I'm going to throw that in there. I want there to be a box there, and in that box, you're going to have this piece you need that's going to make this quest a little easier. And so I'll go and I'll modify that thing, and then I'll run through and I'll do that quest again. And you know what? When I play Fallout the next time, now it's Paul's version of Fallout. And it causes me to make decisions, right? Because you can just cheat. I could just throw in, here's a nuke. Here, first, when you step off out of the vault, here's a nuke sitting on the ground, and then you can blow anybody up. That's no fun. But I like... well, okay, it's a little fun. But I like going in and changing it in a ways that'll be interesting to me. Sometimes I'll remove tools. I'll say, hey, this was way too easy. This is a little harder. That's what's exciting to me. And how to get gaming industry into a place where people can create worlds for themselves, that's where I want it to go. And I don't think the world is going that way, because that's hard to sell.
For sure. You bring up a lot of interesting points, and I think that there are a lot of different places that this conversation could go. But the things that stand out to me is we have our big companies, our big Electronic Arts and things like
Absolutely.
that have, that they're like a Fortune 500 company. They're like, a big company that has a profit margin to look at and think about, and how to maximize that. And especially we're in this age where gamers are more vocal than ever, and they can talk directly to the developers or publishers that they want to. They can engage on a level that hasn't been seen, 15, 20 years ago. So games are kind of evolving. So there is that large group, but then there are things like indie games that are passion projects, a lot more passion projects that are a lot smaller, that may give you that more sense of, injecting yourself in something, that have the ability to tell different types of stories. And I think the interesting thing is that when you go to a movie like Avengers, let's say you get a video game trailer in front of that, you're going to get a big video game trailer.
Oh, absolutely.
You're going to get a Battlefield or Call of Duty type trailer. You're not going to be advertised with create your own adventure type game.
But I would argue that one game that I do not play that fits my criteria perfectly is Minecraft.
Yeah.
So in Minecraft, you create your own experience, you create your own world, literally. I would like to see those sorts of activities to take place in more games, more actively. But I do agree with you that is not the sort of thing that they're going to be able to market the way that they're going to market it.
That's a very simple way to put it, accurate way to put it. I'm going on with a bunch of different...
yeah.
But marketing, yes. Being able to market something a lot smaller. Now, granted, with something like Minecraft, that game has been marketed to hell and back.
But there are
T-shirts and plushies and...
But it started as the independent experience that you were describing, right?
Sure.
And I think that you're right, that the games that I'm looking for are in those locations. But
how do you find them, though? That's the question. Is how does a publisher or a developer, how do they get their product to the masses?
I've been thinking about that a lot, actually.
Granted, luckily we live in a place where things like social media, while having a lot of negative reactions or responses to games or how they are made or things that they see in games, there can also be things like a lot of excitement. There's a mobile game that I played through recently called Florence. It's like a 30-minute long thing, but it takes a lot of really interesting ideas of how they want the game to work, how they want to tell their story, and then how the gameplay is implemented into the storytelling. But that's a game that, it's a mobile game, which generally I'm not in that ecosystem. Right. I'm not going there once a week when all the new games launch, and I'm not looking up reviews for mobile games, and I'm not going to curated lists and all these things. But a lot of the people I follow on Twitter do. Yeah, I heard about this game from Twitter.
Yeah.
From someone that I follow on Twitter, was like, I played this game and it's beautiful. And then a couple of days later, I see another person I follow on Twitter talk about it. And then another person. And then it gets brought up on a podcast I listen to. And the way that a lot of games can come to me are the people that I choose to follow. podcasts that I choose to listen to. And I think that's really interesting because I think that there are probably a lot of brilliant and beautiful and amazing games out there that are not getting the attention that they need or deserve. And I think
that would be a great way to encounter them.
yeah.
But see, I don't know, but for me, so I've been trying that. And I found a bunch of really good games, and frankly, that's how I found Chainsaw 8, right?
Yeah.
Is that I got on here because you guys were playing games I'd never heard of and never seen before, and I was like, whoa, this is great. I'm going to watch that.
Yeah.
And
Torsten brings up a great point. A free mode will always help to promote the title.
very much so. That is
Yeah.
a great point.
Yeah, it's one of my favorite games from last year, Doki Doki Literature Club. It's a free game. It's just free. And it's really easy to be like,
All my efforts, so I was talking about modding the scripts. All my efforts to modify the scripts were utter failures. I could not get it to work the way I wanted it to. All you can do is just remove the script wholesale and put them back in. But my point is that even Doki Doki has the component where you can manipulate the game on your own standards.
yes, don't want to go too much into it.
Oh,
in case.
certainly.
But definitely Doki Doki Literature Club. It's free on Steam. Go check it out. Another game that comes to mind is I just mentioned that there was a game that had 600,000 concurrent viewers, and that was somebody that was playing Fortnite, or Fortnite Battle Royale specifically. And the Battle Royale mode is completely free. Anybody can play it.
Yep.
They can go download and play it right now. They have cosmetic items and stuff that you can put in through microtransactions. But still, Torsten makes a Fortnite blowing up, he says.
It's so
or
true.
she.
I found that even Drake plays it.
Yes.
That's so awesome.
Yeah, that was how it got up to 600,000 viewers. Is
Drake was...
yeah, a whole bunch of celebrities kind of got together. They actually even recently announced that at E3 they're going to have 100 people. 50 of them are going to be celebrities and 50 of them are going to be pro gamers, and they're all going to play one game
Nice.
of Fortnite Battle Royale together. But yeah, the game is free.
It reminds me a lot of the model that Counter-Strike used.
Yeah.
They used the Half-Life engine, and they created this free experience, and then they developed and refined that experience, and then they started monetizing that. And I think that was brilliant.
For sure.
When so I have this friend. When I was hanging out at Origin, I made friends with this guy named Dr. Cat, and he designed parts of a couple of different Ultimas. And but the thing he's most known for is he made Furcadia, which is an online MMO that's been around. It's like second to Ultima Online, how old it is. It's ancient. But right when UO was coming out, I was really, really, really angry that they had the gall to try and charge a subscription for it. And so we were all at a party, and I was maybe a little more drunk than I should have been. And Dr. Cat was talking about how brilliant it was that they were going to be using this model of the subscription, the one that we all now know as the EverQuest Warcraft model, the classic model for subscription, right? But at the time, this was unheard of. This was a crazy idea. You paid your $40 at the time. I always paid $60 for a game. That's crazy. You paid $40 and then you got your game. You got everything you wanted. And I said, no. If you're charging me extra, I will never play a game like that. And 3 months later, I was playing Ultima Online. But what that has always struck me about is that the way in which successful game designers like Dr. Cat are thinking about how to monetize their game experience. And how I saw that as a purely negative thing. I saw that as you're trying to take advantage of the people that you're of the people you're trying to give this gaming experience to. I want to just give them stuff because I live in a happy-ass Fruitopia where nobody has to eat, apparently. But what he had the vision to see was that you had to have a plan for how your game was going to survive within the environment that you were in. And he explained that to me in a way that did not make sense until like 7 years later. But I feel like Counter-Strike and Fortnite have really grabbed onto that idea in a really good way.
I think it leads to what I would say are the biggest games currently right now, which is the term that's used is games as services.
Right.
Where a game comes out, you have recent examples are things like Fortnite or even like Monster Hunter, but it can be an online multiplayer experience. It generally is if it's a games as a service. But they release the game. Sometimes they have a set price point. Sometimes they don't. And then they find ways to constantly update the game and monetize through those updates, whether it be like new multiplayer maps or new weapons or
new outfits,
new game modes, things like that. What do you think about games as services?
So here's my challenge, is there was a game called Earth and Beyond. I think I'm getting the name right. I loved Earth and Beyond. And again, I work for EA, so I'm slightly biased here. Earth and Beyond was...
So it was an EA game?
Yeah, absolutely. It was, in fact, EA's first multiplayer online game. Cool. And I played the crap out of it. I got to level 60, you would fly your little spaceships, you'd do mining. It was really simplistic. I hesitate to even call it an MMO. If you're interested, check it out. It's actually, if you go look it up. But here's the thing. No one on the planet can play Earth and Beyond. It is physically impossible for me to ever have that experience again. And that is heartbreaking to me.
That is one of my, I don't want to call it a pet peeve per se, but one of the most important things to me is game preservation.
Yes.
Finding a way to keep games around. I hear about there was something that Nintendo did back in the early 90s, only in Japan, where they would broadcast a game that you could play for 1 hour on Fridays or something. But that game was always a different game. And it would be a lot of times, so there's a Legend of Zelda game where it had 2 different main characters, but you had 1 hour and there was a narrator who's talking over the game and telling people where to go.
This is a brilliant experience.
It is. And you can find videos and stuff of it online, but I would love to experience that.
And it can never happen.
Yeah.
So that's my challenge with games as a service. I recognize that a game is going to require resources in order to continue being successful and in order to continue existing. And I recognize, so I spend a lot of time playing abandonware because I enjoy playing those old games and because it is, as a part of this, games is preservation. I don't know. To me, it's very satisfying to me that if somebody could show up banging on my door at 3 a.m. and go, Paul, we've got to play Darklands to save the planet. And I could say, I've got it right here. Let's go. And take them to play it. I have that experience available to me. So that's very satisfying to me. So I think that there needs to be... I think that we haven't figured out the lifestyle of games yet. Or not the lifestyle, the life cycle of games yet. I think that the old life cycles of games don't work anymore. Wake up, PEBIV. Bang, bang, bang. We gotta play Darklands.
If I said note to self, next time in Austin, wake up, PEBIV.
There you go. That sounds awesome, actually. That would make my day. You banging on my house at 3 a.m. saying we got to play Darklands. That would be awesome. So, I think that the life cycle of games needs to be re-examined, and I think that Good Old Games is an example of the ways in which those life cycles are currently starting to be re-examined. The games that I collected as abandonware are becoming. You can't go out and get them as abandonware anymore because somebody bought the license to them and is reselling it, which is great because they are preserving that game and making it available for people to continue playing. So I'm in full support of that. But I think that we need to figure out what's going to happen to these games and to these experiences so that we can do it in a more conscious way. I think that the fact that Ultima Online still exists is wonderful, but is the way that it has changed, is that the best experience for the people who play that game?
I think about something like Vanilla WoW. A lot of people talk about how incredible WoW was when it first launched, and there were so many things that were interesting or unique about it that no longer exist as it's gotten more and more iterations. And Blizzard is even relaunching it. Obviously, there have been I don't know what you would call it, but like a pirated version
Right.
of a server or whatever it is. Basically, where someone builds a version of
I
Vanilla
would
WoW that
call
you
it
can play.
fan created. I would
Fan
call
created,
it.
yes.
It's more like when you make a Star Trek episode and you put it out on YouTube and then.
Yes.
So, anyways,
But yeah, I think that even now there are games that people hunger for an original version of that thing. They want like the most complete version that their memory will provide them.
Yes.
Because a lot of times I have a lot of great memories of playing like GoldenEye on Nintendo
There you go.
64 for 10 hours in one day with my friends. But if I went back and played GoldenEye right now, it would feel gross and it plays gross, and using the C buttons to like kind of move around or the way that the controls and stuff work, it just, it's very, very dated in comparison. And I don't think that I will ever be able to grab that. I think that I think that there are memories and things that I can latch onto, but what that experience was, and to be honest, I think that works with everything in life.
Oh, very much so.
Movies or books or anything like that.
You
works
can't
that
go
way.
home again concept.
Yeah, exactly. But I love the idea of trying to grab it, of trying to capture the magic of something from
Absolutely.
our childhood.
I think that we could do it more consciously, and that we would have a better experience in the long run if we had ways for games to get old in a predictable way.
Yeah.
Because, like, I don't expect to be able to play Warcraft when I'm, retired. Like, I just expect it will be gone, like Earth and Beyond, and that makes me a little sad.
For sure.
On the other hand, I'll still be able to play Darklands, and I'll still be able to play Master of Magic, no problems. So, games that are not a service do have their advantages.
I think there are a lot of advantages and disadvantages to, we were talking about the power that people's voices had on the internet. I think one of the huge advantages of the internet is being able to recapture a lot of that.
Oh, that's true.
Several months ago, I was talking to DKP, he's one of the other members of Chainsaw Ape, about a ghost show that I watched as a kid, and then we found it on YouTube.
Nice.
And then I rewatched it, and like it looked terrible, and the acting was terrible, but like in my mind, it was one of the most terrifying things I had ever seen, and I had all these memories of it. And I think that I think that you'll be able to find videos, 20, 30, 40 years down the road of a lot of these
certainly.
different games that you played.
For me, there was a show called The Phoenix, and I thought it was just like I had made it up in my head. It was just this story I told, and on YouTube I found it one day, and there was the intro, and it was such a bad show. But as a kid, I loved it.
Yeah, it's pretty magical. So let's move forward to the future.
Sure.
Are there any video games that are like coming, that are in the pipeline, that you've seen trailers for, or that you have an interest in, that are coming?
So here's my challenge.
Coming out at one point.
Here's my challenge. Honestly, no. And that's I think that's why I've been playing so many abandonware games right now, is that I'm having a hard time finding the games that I want to play in the future. I was really looking forward to Mario Odyssey.
Yeah.
And it paid off. It turned out to be a game that I enjoyed as much as I hoped I would. So, but after that, I didn't have any games that I was watching the horizon for. The games that I look forward to are getting harder and harder for me to find. So the game I really most look forward to is already out, and I don't have a way to easily play it. The game I want to play is Fallout VR, and I want to play it with mods. And here's a couple of problems with that. One, I'm about $1,500 short of the equipment I would need to pull off Fallout VR.
Yeah.
Two, I have to get Fallout VR itself. And three, the mod systems for it are not solid yet. You can mod it, but it's not supported by Bethesda as well as some of their other modding. It's not as exciting as I want it to be. Now, on the other hand, Fallout 4 itself is getting to the place where the mods are getting exciting. It's taken them a while, but the mods are starting to come out with the bigger quests. They're coming out with the good sex mods. We're getting to the place where I get more excited about
Mysterious B.I.G.
Mysterious B.I.G. Exactly. It's getting more exciting. So what that says to me is that there's a possibility that Fallout VR could be there. If I could play Fallout VR and put in my own characters and then be able to interact with them in VR, that's incredible. That would be so unbelievably cool. But what I don't have, and that kind of makes me sad, is I don't have any just like regular game that I'm looking forward to, you know?
Dude, that is heartbreaking for me.
And I think that...
The excitement, the anticipation. I actually enjoy the act of looking forward to a game more than I even enjoy a lot of the games I play. I get more excited when, E3 is my favorite time of the year. So seeing all the new trailers and everything, that to me is better than like in the fall when all the games come out, where it's like, yeah, I'm very, very, very excited to play like Smash Brothers when it comes out. But you will not see the joy and enthusiasm in my face as much as you will when I see that trailer. When I see when we got the most recent Smash Brothers trailer, and it's, you're trying to figure out what it is, and it's inklings and all this, and then she turns and her eye pops out, and then it's got the Smash logo. We streamed that, and I was losing my mind.
Absolutely.
And you can find videos online of tons of people losing their mind at that announcement, and it breaks my heart that
But you
don't have a game like that right now for you.
But I think that's just a point of where... I think that it's just a point of where we are in the industry right now. I think that there will be a game that I'm excited about coming soon. I just don't think... But let me ask you this. I know that you're the interrogator for this particular
Please,
case.
interrogate away.
But do you see the difference from where we are and what games are coming from right now to where we were about a year, let's say a year and a half ago? Now, I know that was right before the Switch came out, and so...
My mind was all wrapped up in the Nintendo NX.
The Nintendo NX, exactly.
Yeah.
But even like you had Final Fantasy 15 coming, we had some Uncharted's coming, it felt like there was a whole bunch right over the horizon. I don't have that same feeling right now that I had then. And I've been thinking about it, like, am I being unreasonable, or has the industry changed? So that's my question. Is this just my own bias because of how I feel about the kinds of games that are coming, or is there a difference in where the gaming industry is now?
I think it is. I definitely think that there is a difference. I think that we, like I was talking about with how vocal gamers can be, we get very disappointed when games get delayed.
It's true.
We love the idea of a quick turnaround. When a game gets announced at E3 and then 3 months later we're playing it.
That's one place.
We love those kinds of things.
Fallout kicked ass at.
Yeah, exactly. And the industry, the marketing teams, the developers and publishers, they know that. They know that we love short turnarounds. Now, granted, we like the long ones too, but like when I hear people talk about things like Death Stranding, they're like, man, Death Stranding looks great. But God, is that game going to be in 2020? It always comes with a but.
Yes.
It always has like something attached to it that's like, man, I wish I didn't know that this game existed because it is very far off. I like a combination. I like knowing that Death Stranding is far off and Kojima plays. There's a whole nother video game that exists of him putting out weird trailers and people analyzing them and teasing things and sneaking things in, and like that's a whole other thing that I really enjoy. But I also do love where it's like Resident Evil 7, where we're watching a trailer, we don't know what it is, and then we find out it's Resident Evil 7, and then 6 months later we're playing Resident Evil 7.
So do you feel like we come up to... So here's the other thing. We're just short of E3, right? Everybody's is beginning to get their E3 excitement up, right?
Yeah.
And it's a couple of months, but everybody's starting to get a little thrilled, right? So do you think that maybe I'm being unfair and that I should just wait till after E3?
No, I mean...
Because I don't know what to look forward to at E3, right? Going into the last E3, I was like, I'm hoping to see this, and I'm hoping to see this, and oh, this is going to be awesome. And this one I'm going, well, yeah. We'll see some tennis.
Well, we might see some tennis, but yeah, I think that...
But do you see what I'm saying?
Yeah, I know exactly what you're saying, and I think that it has a lot to do with changes in the industry.
Yeah.
When we talk about somebody like Microsoft, we know that they're working on another Halo, and we know they're working on another Gears of War. But outside of that, we have things like Sea of Thieves that are right around the corner for us. We have that are, honestly, by the time a lot of people watch this, that will already be out. But things like Crackdown and State of Decay and all of these games that are kind of in the short term, semi-short term. But we don't know what Microsoft has for 2019, 2020, things like that. And I think that that's intentional on Microsoft's part.
Oh, I think so too.
To kind of keep us in the dark. So I think what you're talking about, there's a lot of validity to it. That shorter turnarounds are hot.
So, but you asked me about anticipated games, right?
Yeah.
So then I wonder if my anticipated, so maybe this is unfair, but to link the last two questions you asked is, I wonder if there's a relationship between the Destinies and the Anthems of the world and the lack of focus on the more single-player, big release game cycles that I am used to and that I like. It feels like the big names are spending their money on 10-year projects. This project's going to be around for 10 years.
Yeah, for sure.
And I wonder if that means that I'm getting less of the games that I'm interested in. So I don't know. That's what I've been thinking about lately.
That's definitely a fear I've had of, like, I prefer single player, me by myself, closing the world out around me, put the headphones on and just, like, be sucked into a world. I love that. And with something like, I've been playing a lot of Monster Hunter lately.
Yeah.
But I have moods that I don't really want to play Monster Hunter right now. I'm not really feeling like getting in this world and partying up and having to, like, fire an SOS flare to call people in to help me. And there are things about that like, don't interest or entice me. Now, it's a huge thing right now, and people are capitalizing on it, which is fine. But kind of what you're talking about of, like, what are the... Bethesda is a great example of, like, they are all about single player.
They are.
Like, they have less than a handful of games. They have stuff like Elder Scrolls Online. Mm-hmm. They have the Quake free-to-play. I think it's free-to-play game. Doom has a multiplayer mode. I'm sure a sequel to that will come, and it will have a multiplayer mode. But the Fallouts and things like that of the world.
But they're using the older model. They are not as focused on that games as a service as we're seeing from other big companies.
Yeah, like the Activisions of the
world.
Exactly. Adify says, I've been playing a lot of Tropico. I made a great dictator.
See, that's actually really awesome to me. Tropico, that's like... I love it when people play games from a while back. Yeah. That makes me just genuinely... That just makes me happy. I don't know. I'm glad. I think you'd make a fine dictator.
He actually is Cuban, so it kind of works out.
Oh, that's a good point. That hadn't occurred to me. Yeah.
Is there anything else that you want to talk about? If any of you guys out there in the chat have any questions or anything you want to throw them Paul's way, I'm sure he'll be happy to answer them.
Yeah, absolutely.
So, while we're doing that, one of the things that, and you know this about me and I know this about you, we kind of have a little bit of a different alignment in terms of, like, the types of games that we enjoy or play. There is a little bit of crossover here and there, but things like Mario Odyssey are both massive, huge
absolutely
fans. But I've kind of always been a console gamer, and especially with a lot of the stuff that you've talked about.
I'm also exclusively PC, and so, because I get to control so much about my gaming experience.
That's what I was going to ask. Was what is it about PC gaming that kind of grabs you? It's
the fact that I can get in there and I can muck around with my game. And that is so satisfying to me. Even dumb stuff like I was one of the people. I actually got flagged by Blizzard because for cheating. Because I made all of my elves, when they took off all their armor, they were naked. And this is just like, I've enjoyed that since Daggerfall, and darn it, I want it in there. And nobody ever gets naked, but it is a little juvenile. But, so I went and I edited all that, right? So you can actually, like, do things like make yourself completely invisible, which would be an obvious cheat. I wasn't doing that, but they still flagged me for cheating. But those, even in the case of playing this massively multiplayer online games, I want to be able to have some control over my environment and my experience of the game. And it goes back, like I hacked the Crystal, there was a game, Quest for the Crystal, something like that. Anyways, I hacked it with a hex editor. back in the day. And since then, I have always crawled into games to try and figure out how they work, and that's what PC gives me, is the ability to do
cool.
that.
Did you have any consoles growing up?
I had a
obviously.
Nintendo, an 8-bit Nintendo.
An Atari?
And no, I never had an Atari.
Okay,
I would go to friends' houses to play the Atari. I had a Nintendo, an NES 8-bit. I had the next console I got was a PlayStation 1. And I quit smoking. I said, I'm going to quit smoking. And then I argued with my wife, and I said, all right, so since I quit smoking, we're saving $50 a month on cigarettes. So if I can go 2 months, then I'm halfway towards the cost of the PlayStation and Final Fantasy VII. Because they've been playing Final Fantasy VII ads nonstop on the TV.
Yeah.
And I wanted that experience.
I remember seeing commercials for it and like, what?
Exactly.
Like, I was never a huge Final Fantasy fan growing up. And my first time playing through Final Fantasy VII was actually last year. Phenomenal. Holds up. Still very, very good game. But I remember seeing those trailers and being like, my mind being completely blown.
Oh.
This is the future. This looks real. This looks like a cartoon or a film or something. It has huge explosions and things that, and an epic story and things that Final Fantasy games have always kind of brought you. I think it's
so I had
very fascinating.
The PlayStation for Final Fantasy, and I played that and Monster Rancher on it. Which
was Monster Rancher the one where you can like, put your own CDs in?
Yes, and then you would create a monster based on your CD.
Yeah.
I love that.
Yeah.
So, and then the other one I had was a Nintendo 64, and on that I played Mario 64 and Zelda, Ocarina of Time, which is one of my favorite games.
Our chat just disappeared.
Just
okay,
disconnected.
We can look to the right and see it there.
Oh, there we go. But honestly, those are my experiences with consoles. I have very limited experience with consoles because it didn't give me as much control over what my experience would be. So
makes sense.
Yeah.
And you recently got a Switch.
And I got a Switch, which
is very cool.
I don't like spending a lot of money, but I have to admit, every time I pick up that Switch, I have this unusual experience of going, "This was a good investment." I've had it for since November. Yeah, I think it was like November. So I've had it for 4 months maybe.
Yeah.
And I feel like I've gotten my investment out of my. If my Switch blew up today, I would feel like I had gotten my money's worth out of the experience I've had with it. And that's after 4 months. That is a great purchase and a great investment. And I actually recommend the Switch to anybody who might consider purchasing a. And I don't even work for them. I'm a totally
Nintendo
on the fly.
fanboy, as you can tell by,
yes, the shield
cartridges and all this kind of stuff.
Yeah.
So, always makes me happy to hear when people jump on that train. Idify asks, PEBIV, do you ever plan on getting a PlayStation 4?
All right, so PlayStation 4 tempted me because of Final Fantasy 15.
And as of last week, it's now on PC.
It's now on PC. So I could actually, and I can mod it if I put it on my PC. So.
Yeah.
But PlayStation 4 does give several exclusives that have tempted me. Journey is gorgeous.
Yeah, Journey is phenomenal.
There's a bunch of exclusives to PlayStation that are tempting. If I were to buy a console like either an Xbox or a PlayStation, I would definitely get a PlayStation because of those exclusives. But the truth is I like being able to mod my things. I want that experience of being able to make changes. So I don't think that it's likely I'm going to invest in a PS4.
Cool.
Idify says, PS4 was so worth it. I'm glad that I broke down and bought one. See, I cannot fault anyone that get one. I'm very tempted. But I think I'm going to stick with my PC for right now.
Well, I think that's going to do it for us.
All right.
PEBIV, this has been an absolute joy. You are a national treasure.
Oh,
you are sincerely one of the nicest, sweetest, most sincere, amazing people I've ever met. So,
well, you were very kind.
It has been a pleasure sitting here with you for the last hour.
Well, if I'm a tenth as good as you say, then I'm doing
probably way better, to be honest. So yeah, that's going to do it for our first episode of Chainsawing Presents Paul Burns. And I don't know if the show will be back. I hope it is. I had a ton of fun. And if you're watching this show and you know me in person or you don't, just hit me up and let me know, and we'll get you on here. We'll do the exact same thing. We'll sit in a couple of chairs in front of a dusty fireplace, and we'll have a good chat. So, yeah, thank you guys for hanging out. Peb, anything that you want to plug or anything before we go?
I recommend you listen to Preparation Avengers. It's a podcast going over all of the Marvel Universe movies coming up to Infinity War, and I think we really enjoy doing it. It's very good.
If you're watching this after Infinity Wars come out, still worth going back and checking.
Absolutely.
I'm a fan. So, yeah, that's going to do it for us. Paul, again, thank you so much for
my pleasure. Thanks for having me.
Absolutely. Thank you.
And
Goodbye,
thank you
everyone.
all.